It's history where two best friends tell you shit. I don't know what else to say at this point.
Shit from history.
Shit from history. I'm Emily, and this is Morgan, and we're both struggling today.
So hard.
So hard. Morgan, regale us. How are you?
I'm sick again. Pretty sure Christmas Eve I came down with norovirus because apparently that's been going around. And I looked up the symptoms and I had all of those symptoms. And now I just have some weird, funky respiratory viral thing. I went to the doctor. It was a different doctor than my usual one, but it's just the same every time. It's something viral. Here's some cough syrup. Go away. That is the messaging I get every time I go to the doctor. Like, why am I coughing and can't breathe? It's something viral every time.
Have you tried inhaling? Yes, I have.
I have.
Oh my God. I think there's I don't know what juju is going on at the end of this year we call 2024. But without getting into too much detail, obviously, my dad had a very big health scare.
Yeah.
Like 5 days before Christmas.
Yeah.
Like hospital kind of health scare. And we were like, what the fuck, Dad? We love you. He's fine now.
Yes.
It's all worked out. Everything's good. But I was like, I am already too stressed. None of us needed this, Father. It's obviously not his fault, but this is how we deal with stress in my family.
Right.
We make jokes.
Yeah,
I literally texted my mom and I told her, I said, hey, did the doctors clear him enough for me to come and kick his ass? I do not need this right now. And he was like, that's very funny. So everything's good. And then 2 days after, it was the day he actually got released from the hospital. We had my uncle's Christmas, which he was supposed to go to, but he didn't because obvious reasons. So, we all go there, and then the next day, I get freaking food poisoning from leftovers that had been left in the car for too long. So I was up all night throwing up, and then the next day I was like, I'm tired, but I'm fine. So that's how I know it was like food poisoning. I'm like, what is happening with us collectively?
Emily and I were both puking our guts out, apparently.
Yeah, it's not fun.
It's really not.
I haven't thrown up from an illness, and I could not tell you. I do not get sick. Like, Morgan, when was the last time I was sick? I don't know either. Yeah. I manifest wellness because I don't have time for that shit. Yeah. And I think there's probably been multiple times I've just been sick and I'm just like, oh, I'm just a mom. So I just keep going and I power through. Yeah. Because I don't have a choice. And I think maybe because my body was like, hey, your husband's home. Now's the time. Now's it. You're so gonna be down.
Because, like, I used to never get sick. Like,
yeah.
Emily,
ever.
When we were growing up, how often was I sick? I had like 100% attendance at school. Like, I was just never sick. I was telling Emily earlier, the last time I threw up from an illness was probably in like 2012 when I caught a 24-hour flu bug. Yeah, this week has been it's been a lot. Kyle and I have been in our own little personal tragedy ourselves right before Christmas. Yeah. And then on top of me getting sick, and we did like a whirlwind driving to Columbia, South Carolina, and came back like 2 or 3 days later. I slept through Christmas because, again, I'm pretty sure I got norovirus, and I slept 17 hours on Christmas Day. God. I was awake for I ate some eggs and we opened presents, and we were going to go over to Kyle's grandparents' house, and I was literally falling asleep like in the chair as I was waiting for everyone. And they're like, Morgan, are you okay? And I said, I feel awful. I think I'm running a fever. I was running almost 101 degree fever.
Oh my God.
And they're like, you just stay here and sleep. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And then I slept.
Yeah. Because we don't need to get grandma sick. That's a bad idea.
No, I know, right? So I was like, yeah, I'll stay home. And they left and I slept for like 8 hours.
Oh my God. I wish I could sleep for 8 hours.
Honestly, it was pretty nice.
Yeah. I mean, good. I hate the circumstances, but like, good on you.
Yeah, I slept so much that whole week, and I felt bad.
Yeah.
And because we driven down, and it was just a lot. And then we drove down Tuesday. I got sick Tuesday night, and we drove back on Friday.
Oh my
and it's
God.
like an 8-hour drive. And now we have to go through Atlanta because the old way when we used to go through Asheville is closed forever. So now we have to go through.
You gotta go all the way down to Atlanta and
then we get on 20 to go to Augusta. And then
oh jeez, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that sucks.
It sucks.
How much time does that add on? Like an hour or two?
Honestly, like without traffic, the drive is like it could be less than 7 hours.
Yeah.
But with the Atlanta traffic, on Friday added like an extra hour, at least an hour.
I hate Atlanta. Listen, I'm sure y'all people in Atlanta are fine. I just don't like Atlanta traffic. The way it's laid out, it's stressful.
It's so stressful. I almost missed an exit because I couldn't tell where I was supposed to turn because everything was crowded and I had to slam on my brakes.
It's bad.
It's really bad.
It's bad. That's why I will literally, if we're going to Florida, I will wake up at the butt crack of dawn. I will wake up at 2 a.m. to get in the car by 3, to get our family on the road by 3:30, to just not deal with Atlanta. Because if we can get through Atlanta, we're home. We're smooth sailing, and we can be sitting on the beach by 2 or 3.
Yeah. But you gotta get through Atlanta before 6 a.m.
I have literally, Lou and I have been driving down and looked ahead of us, and it was when we did that. I think we were running a little late, so I think it was maybe 8 o'clock on a weekday that we were driving down, and ahead of us there was nothing. I looked in the rearview mirror, and it looked like an approaching army of cars. It's like everyone had gotten on at the same time right behind us. We sailed through perfectly, and that's when shit hit the fan behind us. And I was like, we couldn't have been 10 minutes later. Couldn't have been.
That's
It would have been awful. I know. I was like, that was the trippiest thing I've ever seen in my life.
That sounds crazy.
It was so crazy. It was wild. Thank goodness our kids just deal with us. Should we get into like what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, 10 minutes in. Let's do it.
Cool. We had a lot to catch up on. It's been over 2 weeks since we've recorded, and I miss you. So
I miss you too.
I need you to come to my house and open your present. So
I know. I need to figure that out.
Yeah. Okay. We'll figure it out. Let's do this skit. It's 1904. Representatives from France and the United States are in a land negotiation in the Isthmus of Panama.
I do not know how on earth you think you can build it in this awful jungle.
Well, I mean, technically, we're gonna dig it.
No shit. But the great Ferdinand de Lesseps couldn't even do it. What makes you think a new country like yours can?
Oh, you mean that feller that dug the ditch in the sand?
Did you just call the Suez Canal a ditch in the sand?
I mean, am I wrong? That's kiddie stuff compared to what we're gonna do here.
You stupid the Americans.
Hey there, buddy. We might be mouthy, but we're gonna be the ones that cut your shipping down by a month, aren't we?
We will see.
Just sign the dotted line so I can get a jump on this canal. I don't know what sounds I'm putting in on that. That was perfect. Thank you.
Oh, my very horrible attempt at a French accent. I'm very sorry to all French-speaking people in the world. I'm sure that was very offensive.
We're doing our best.
We are.
Hopefully y'all got it. So obviously also, before I get into this, we're kicking things way back. I'm back in my closet for the day.
You are in your closet.
Yeah, so, we're throwing it back to OG ill-equipped history, and my husband decided, because I forgot to tell him I was recording tonight, he was like, he didn't tell me that he was going to clean the carpets in the basement. So that's what he's doing right now. So I'm back in the closet because carpet cleaner.
Yeah.
So, if you hear any, the sound of something moving, it's because I'm not on my desk where all of my soft, cup holders are. I'm on a fold-out table in my closet with my laptop on a box. So, I'm doing my best.
You're doing great, sweetie.
Thanks. Thanks, Mom. So, we're talking about the canal. If you are in a safe place and you would like to pull up pictures, I have a link posted in the show notes of just a Getty's image, kind of website of them building it. There's just so many that it's really hard to narrow down. So if you are not driving,
yes,
feel free to pull that up. If you're doing something you need to be using your eyeballs for, just let me regale you with your ears and my voice. Keep your eyes on the road, people. So to talk about the Panama Canal that was built by the Americans, we have to go back to the French failure of the Panama Canal, because we were not the first to attempt it. So in 1881, France attempted to build a canal in Panama, and they hired Ferdinand de Lesseps to be in charge of this. Now, this is the guy that built the Suez Canal in Egypt. I did not even know what the Suez Canal was until a couple years ago when that one boat got stuck for a long time.
Yeah.
But I know now. So they were like, if he can build the Suez Canal, he can build the Panama Canal. They're just ditches, right?
Yeah. How hard can it be?
Yeah, grab your shovel. It'll be fine. No. Not saying that the Suez Canal was an easy feat. I mean, obviously in our skit, we kind of poked fun at it. But it's compared to the Panama Canal, it's easy, but that doesn't make it easy. You literally had to dig a giant ditch, hundreds of feet wide and 50 feet below the ground for hundreds, I don't know how many miles, but across the desert. Good God.
Yeah.
But to build, which is what they were planning on doing, to build the Panama Canal to sea level, they were planning on just doing another long ditch, for lack of better terms. The Panama Canal was going to be 10 times deeper to build it at sea level. So what really got the French was the mountains and malaria/yellow fever.
Yeah.
During this time, they had no idea that it was actually mosquitoes. Huh. The French thought that it was kind of like a mystery. Everybody had their own idea. So the French thought it was ants that carried the disease, which is interesting that we'll talk about it later. A lot of people thought it was unsanitary conditions.
Yeah.
So, which, I mean, is a common way of contracting things. So, whatever.
Makes sense, yeah.
But it does make sense. But it seems like the French actually at least were on the right track with the bugs.
Yeah, maybe they noticed the stings and were like, something stung me and now I'm sick.
Yeah.
Must be an ant.
Yeah, I have an ant on me. Yeah. So what was really interesting is that the French you would get sick. They would put you in a hospital bed. And on each leg of the bed, they would had this little like metal cup attached to it, and they would fill this metal cup with water.
Okay.
To stop the ants from crawling up because they would drown in that water.
I see.
Worked really good for ants.
Not
what it also was a breeding ground for mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Which made the malaria and yellow fever worse. And they were dying by the thousands.
Oh my God.
So people during the French times were dying so quickly that when you were brought into the hospital, they would oftentimes bring a coffin in before you even died. Like, they were just like, well, we got another one.
Oh, that's awful.
On top of everything that could go wrong did. So they had fires, earthquakes, all the things.
So it seems cursed from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And their plan was to do exactly what they did at the Suez Canal and just dig down to sea level. So they're having to move a ton of earth because this is not the Egyptian desert. This is a very mountainous, rugged jungle. I mean, this is insanity. In 8 years, not only did they waste almost $1 billion francs.
Oh my God.
Which is like $287 million comparatively. It was the greatest financial disaster in the 19th century. And de Lesseps, literally, he went bankrupt. He narrowly escaped prison. It was so bad. And he was basically driven insane. And I think he passed away, not like immediately after, but like he did not live out the rest of his lives as the like grand person he was before.
Wow.
Not only all the money and resources gone. In 8 years, 22,000 people died. A good majority of those being from the West Indies.
Oh my God, that's
as laborers.
So sad. That's so sad.
Awful. So in 1889, the French abandoned their works, and they had only gone a few miles.
Wow. In 8 years.
In 8 years. Now, I want you to really think about this failure, not as, listen, we love you, France, but to put in comparison to where we're going to end at the end of this journey. So, my next section is called Whatever, We Do What We Want. So, no nation on Earth, according to, I watched a couple different documentaries. One of them, I don't think I exactly finished, but it was, I think, like the series like Modern Marvels or something, one of those. I have the link in the show notes. And then the other one is the PBS like American, I think it's called American Experience documentary.
Yeah.
They're really good. I love those. So a lot of this comes from, the majority of that comes from both of these, and a lot of the timelines comes from other smaller sources. But one of the documentaries mentioned that there wasn't another nation on Earth that had more to gain by building the Panama Canal than America, because we were still a very, very new country compared, and we were really scrapping for that power, especially the naval power. And we were the leading manufacturing country in the world at the time. I really don't know exactly where we rank now, but we're not number one. And to be able to ship all those goods overseas faster, we really needed that canal. So when Theodore Roosevelt took office in 1901, that was the obvious path for him. On June 19th of 1902, the U.S. Senate passed the Spooner Bill. And this Spooner Bill authorized the government to build a canal through Panama.
I think I remember hearing about the Spooner Bill in high school. It's vaguely familiar.
What's crazy is in 1902, the U.S. Senate passes the Spooner Bill. We don't have permission to build the canal in Panama yet. It's just the United States was like, yeah, we're good. We're going to build it. And Panama's like, we definitely didn't say you could.
Wow. I'm very struck by, and I feel like this happens, like, in several things that we've talked about when we talked about, like, the colonization of Hawaii and banana republics and stuff, where just Americans will just be like, okay, we're going to do this thing, and the sovereign nations that they're coming to are like, excuse me?
No.
Wait, no.
No, thank you.
America just has a permit that says, I do what I want, and they're just like, okay, here's our permission slip. We can do whatever we want now.
Yeah, because I said.
Crazy.
So at the time, Panama was a small province of Colombia. And they did try to come to an agreement, but America wanted a whole lot more control than what Colombia was willing to give. And Colombia was having absolutely none of it. They're like, no, this is still our land. We will let you build this here, but you don't control it. And America's like, no, we're going to control it. Okay, thank you. And they rejected all the Americans' negotiations and just stopped them completely. They're like, nope, we're done talking to you. We're not doing this. Roosevelt literally wanted to improve this part of the world, even if this part of the world didn't quite want to be improved.
What does improved mean? Industrialized?
Improved means better for the United States. Yeah. Again, themes. So, he had a couple options. And by he, I mean the United States. Obviously, we have a 3-branch government, whatever. It's not all the power doesn't sit on the president, but whatever. So, I'm saying he, for lack of a better term. He could invade Panama and take it by force. Or, which he did think about. Apparently, he sent some spies. Or, probably through the spies, he learned that there were some rebels talking about rebelling.
Yeah.
Rebelling. And he was like, ooh, or I could do the sneakier thing and back the rebels and get Panama to declare its independence if I back it, and then they'll owe me, and then I get my canal.
Yeah.
So on November the 3rd of 1903, the rebels seized the isthmus. And isthmus is just like that small point, guys.
Yeah, it's
That's
just
what
like
we
a
keep
little
referring to.
jutting
It's a little
out thing.
strip.
Yeah,
It's literally like 50 miles wide. That's as wide as. So when I say isthmus, it's just there. So November 3rd of 1903, rebels seized the isthmus. And they just so happened to be aided by a suspiciously well-timed American gunboat in the harbor of Cologne.
Oh.
And the revolution was over by sundown. There were only 2 casualties. One was, unfortunately, a shopkeeper.
Aww.
And the other was a very unlucky donkey.
Oh, no.
I know. So sad in both cases. But instead of fighting Colombia, he just kind of sent bags of money and pretty much paid off the Colombian troops to go back to Colombia.
He's giving, like, Emperor Palpatine vibes, where he's, like, kind of playing both sides a little bit. Like, hey, let's have a coup, but also, like, it's not going to be a violent coup because I've already paid off the other government, so the coup can be nonviolent. Wow.
Yeah. So 3 days later, the United States formally recognized the new Republic of Panama. Who gave them the authority to do that?
again, like we've talked about it before, the United States was just doing shit, like, just because it wanted to, and the rest of the world was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's like your, I don't know, your grocery store clerk being like, you're now knighted. Who gave you the authority for that?
Yeah.
Who are you?
I mean, the United States did something similar with Hawaii. They were like, oh, yeah, yeah, you guys can, like, take over this government. And the government of Hawaii was like, what? No, you can't.
No. And literally, they're like, no, you're the Republic of Panama now. And if they were like, no, you're not, the United States was like, talk to my gunboat about it.
Yeah.
Talk to my boat with the guns. I don't think you want to.
That's so crazy.
Wild. Literally, I love how this documentary said this. Is like, Colombia had no idea of the audacity of the Americans. And they didn't. No. At this point, I don't think anybody really did.
I don't think audacious. The Americans knew how audacious the Americans
literally
were.
Actually, that's one of my points coming up, is it really left the American public divided, because half of everyone was like, hell yeah, look at us being cunning, this makes us better, and the other half were like, oh fuck, oh god, we're like the British. Like literally.
I mean, they're not wrong.
So again, the one of the documentaries stated that to be a powerful nation, and I 100% agree with this, all the very powerful nations are very arrogant.
Yes.
I mean, just think of, like, not individual people, obviously, but the British government, the German government, French government. America was vying to be one of those, where they're like, oh, we're badass, we're still new, we've got that spirit, we're young and scrappy. But, like, they needed to boost themselves and be like, we're a big dog in this race. We're you guys.
A power.
Yeah. So, the Panamanians really realized that they had kind of been sold out when the Americans started laying out the lines of the canal. America pretty much, they could do whatever they want at this point, because they're the reasons that Panama is, you know, its own thing, Panama now. Yeah. And the American kind of laid sovereignty over the entire canal zone, and it literally cut this new nation in two. Mm-hmm. So you have, like, the lower side and the upper side, and it's still like that. Mm-hmm. We still we own that. That's our sovereign strip. So, yeah, Americans were like, but, like, it's done now. Mm-hmm. So on February 23rd, in 1904, Panama granted the United States control over the Panama Canal Zone for $10 million. So it's not like they didn't get anything out of it. They did get $10 million in 1904, which is a lot. And on May the 4th of 1904, the U.S. acquired the French property that the French had still maintained, that had kind of related to the canal, for $40 million. So $50 million, a very miniature revolution, and some cunning later, we're allowed to start this shit. 2 years after the government said, yeah, we're good to start this shit. Wow. Yeah. So the next section I have is called, quote, Make Dirt Fly. So on May the 4th, they wasted no time. They got underway. They're doing their shit. So enter John Wallace. So John Wallace had served as the president of the American Society of Civil Engineers in 1900. Big guy. Mm-hmm. Also enter the Isthmian Canal Commission. So the National Treasury was footing the bill for this entire thing. And they don't like wasting money.
Nope.
So every time you needed anything. You had to fill out a form and like send it to Washington, and then that made everything slow as shit. I mean, do you need more supplies that you hadn't accounted for? Form. You need a new cart? Form. You need a horse? Form. Yeah.
How annoying.
So, their plan as of this moment was to do exactly what the French did and build a sea-level canal. They picked up where the French left off, and they only had 3,500 men, which is not a whole lot. Only 1,500 of them were from the U.S., and the rest were West Indian workers who had still been there since the time of the French efforts. So I guess they stayed. It had been,
where else
5 years. They could either go back home, or they could just, like, chill here.
Mm-hmm.
And hope that, like, it picks back up. So, Wallace had told Roosevelt that he was going to need about a year to experiment with this equipment, because this is quite literally a mountain of an expedition that they're about to endure. So, Roosevelt and Washington in general kept saying, you need to make dirt fly. Make the dirt fly. Get to digging. Get to working. Let's go. Chop, chop, chop. Time and money's on the line here. And Wallace, eventually in November, from May to November, he was able to hold off, but he did start digging in November. They had 2 big steam shovels and trains left over from the French. And it was just not enough. The shovels could do some work.
Yeah.
The trains couldn't keep up. They kept falling off the track. They were starting to get kind of dilapidated in this really harsh environment. And you had to, the shovels could put it on the train. You had to manually shovel it off the train.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of time.
Takes a lot of time and effort. Manpower they didn't have. 3,500 men is not a lot in a project of this scale.
Yeah, and I'm looking through the old pictures, and not only are they digging in, like, jungle, it's also mountains. Like,
yeah.
It's incredibly mountainous. Like, I'm looking through all these old pictures, and it's just rolling mountains, like, in every picture.
It's mind-boggling. Like, the early days of the Panama Canal were honestly horrendous.
Yeah.
So they started to really figure out that the making dirt fly approach was a very bad idea.
Yeah.
Just 2 weeks into the dig, 3 men contracted yellow fever. By December, 6 more. Now, I know we've mentioned yellow fever and malaria a few times now. So let me just regale you of the symptoms of yellow fever. Jaundice, which is yellowing of the skin and eyes, if you didn't know that. Dark urine, abdominal pain, liver failure, kidney failure, and bleeding from the nose, gums, and under the skin.
Sounds awful.
Yep. And malaria is pretty much the same thing, just kind of minus the bleeding part. That's really the only difference that I could see. So, if you got this, we're talking 1904. Your chances of survival were not very big.
They didn't have antibiotics yet.
No. Within 3 months, 500 Americans just went the fuck back home.
Oh,
They
wow.
They were like, yep. Wallace wanted to portray confidence. So him and his wife would, like, ride around in the carriage and show that, like, being out is fine. He secretly had shipped in 2 metal coffins just in case they died.
Wow. Oh, my God.
It was that scary. Wallace himself. So by June of 1905, only a little over a year on the job, nearly 3/4 of the Americans left. And Wallace resigned. Wallace was done. He's like,
I don't blame him.
No, he's done. And the project came to a standstill. And honestly, I don't really think it was 100% his fault. He was given something that didn't work right and then was forced to just keep doing it.
Yeah, he couldn't change gears. He couldn't strategize. Yeah. He just had to keep doing what he was told.
Right. So the project came to a standstill. And Roosevelt really didn't want this to be a failure. So they had already spent $78 million on this project. So morale was at an all-time low. And Roosevelt sent in a man named John Stevens. I do have pictures of these men, by the way.
Yes, I'm looking at them.
Okay, good. Y'all should look at them too. If you're not driving, I swear, if y'all wreck on our watch. So, John Stevens was a railroad man, and he was famous in the United States for laying track and blasting tunnels where no one else could. He was 52 at the time and had built over 1,000 miles of railroad track, which is more than anyone had ever laid before. So he shows up. He's used to, the Transcontinental Railroad had just gone through the United States. It was one of America's biggest feats. And if y'all hadn't seen the show Hell on Wheels, I very highly suggest it. It's obviously dramatized, but it's about the railroad going through the United States. It's very good. He just saw disillusionment everywhere. He was like, man, these workers, they don't want to be here. They don't know what's happening. This is a literal clusterfuck. And he was like, to make the dirt fly was a stupid idea. So he didn't care who he pissed off. He stopped the digging. He was like, stop it. We got to figure out the number one most important thing in a thing this size, in a job of this scale, is construction management.
I don't disagree.
I don't disagree either, because that is the most important thing, is construction management. If you don't have it, you don't have a project. You just have shit laying about. So he looked at the excavations done by the French, and he was like, wow, that's a cluster. And then he looked at the railroad, and he went, wow, that's even more of a cluster. He literally called the railroad that was there, quote, 2 streaks of rust and a right-of-way.
That's not a very impressive railroad.
Bad.
Yeah.
Bad. Well, think of all the rain they get. It had to have been rusted out by then.
Covered in mud and all that.
Oh. So, he's a railroad man. He went straight for the railroad. And because he saw that was what was holding up, actually digging. So they needed to move dirt. They could move the dirt out of the ground and put it on the train. But the train couldn't get to where it was going. And then the problem was you're digging, so you're moving where the train needs to go. And then you have to relay the tracks for the train to go. And then you have to unload the train. And then a train has to be there. You need more trains. He ended up laying 450 more miles of track.
Wow.
To move men and supplies and even more tracks. They invented a 3-ton steel plow to unload the dirt. So imagine you load it on the flat train car, and then the dirt is piled up onto the flat train car, had no sides. Just a metal plate was secured at an angle, and it would slide across the top of that train, and because it was at an angle, it would push all the dirt off of one side. It could unload dirt in minutes, what a lot of men could do with shovels in hours.
Yeah, it sounds way more efficient.
Was cranking them out. So like I said, the train tracks had to shift to be able to keep up with the moving target, which was like them widening and just breaking down this mountain. It is the coolest thing. If y'all can look up a video of it, it's oh gosh, what do they call it? The track shifter. Literally, it's a crane that comes off the front of a track. It grabs onto a track. It picks it up and scoots it over. Everything's still connected. It's just like bendy, like a kid's toy.
Okay.
It picks it up, moves it over, and then you have a little S, and then the train moves forward. You pick it up, you scoot it over. Your train moves forward, you pick it up and scoot it over. Everything stays connected. It's just you're shifting it over a little at a time. And it saves so much time because you're not having to manually undo it, pick it up, scoot it over, connect it back, and then go back and do it again. It's really cool. And they ended up getting 68 of the biggest earth-moving machines ever built. So now that they figured out that the trains can actually keep up, they had 95-ton steam shovels built. 68 of them. They could scoop 8 tons of dirt at a time.
Wow.
Which was 3 times the amount that could be scooped up by the French per scoop. They're digging.
It seems like John Stevens is like the brain that this project needed, because he's literally getting the earth moving.
Yeah. And I think Washington had kind of learned their lesson with Wallace, where they were like, maybe we should let the dude in Panama run the project in Panama.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And stop telling him how to, like, maybe we'll let you do your thing.
Yeah.
So, now that all that is figured out, there were 2 teeny tiny little issues. One was the mountain pass.
Yeah.
Because, my God, it's a mountain. And the other was the Chagres River. And the river itself, obviously, the mountain pass is like, we know what we're supposed to do with that. Blast it. Dig it.
Yeah.
Whatever. He, over the rainy season, watched the Chagres flood and ebb and, ebb and flow and become very volatile. It rained forever. And he realized that building a sea level canal was just gonna be the worst idea that anyone ever had, because they wouldn't be able to dig it properly for half the year, and it would just be subjected to flooding.
Yeah.
That river needed tamed to do that. So he went to Roosevelt himself in person and was like, bruh, this ain't gonna work. So the answer was a lock canal, which is what they ended up building. So this would be, first they would build a dam to dam up the Chagres in Gatun and create a lake that is 85 feet above sea level. And this lake is pretty much roughly in the middle of the canal. So when you think of the Panama Canal, what do you think of, Morgan? Do you think of just like a straight canal, kind of like the Suez?
I don't know if I think of a straight one, but I think of just like a canal just like sliced through the isthmus, basically, of like...
Me too. I thought of just like walls and it went all the way across, right?
Yeah.
No. It is the coolest thing. If you guys can look up a video of a boat going through it, I'd suggest it. It's really cool. You end up going through the locks. You get dumped. You go through a little bit of like what you would think. And then you're dumped into a lake. And you just get to like flow through the lake. And then you get back in your little canal. And like go back through the locks. So they did that because not only did it tame the Chagres, it made it to where they didn't have to dig as much.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just filled it up with water. And you go through a series of step ups. The lake itself is 85 feet above sea level. So, obviously, I'm like skipping ahead. We are going to talk about how we got there. But, like, the plan was that you go through a lock and the water raises up. And you go through a lock and the water raises up. And then you go through the last lock and then you're at that 85 feet above sea level. No one had ever done this before. This was like the biggest. And at the time, this was the biggest man-made lake ever.
Yeah.
In the world. So Stevens had said, the problem is not one of magnitude. Oh, sorry. The problem is one of magnitude, not miracles. So he's like, it could be done. It's not like it's just big.
Yeah, it's a big old problem.
It's a big old problem. So now they have a new plan. Okay, this next section, sorry guys, we're going to have some real hard conversations. Racism and hard conditions.
Yeah.
So around the time these little cities were being built around the Canal area, and people's families were coming in and living in the married quarters. These married quarters were built in the jungle in the late 1800s when the French were there. They were not very nice. So at the very beginning of this, very few wives would come out, and the ones that did not have a good time at all. I mean, all the food in the markets were different. They're like, how the hell do I cook this?
Yeah.
There were bugs and lizards in the house, bats everywhere. They said the houses just smelled like bat poop. And they needed 2,000 jobs in 1906 alone. So, obviously that fluctuated over the years. That was just 1 year an example.
Yeah.
Of those 20,000 jobs, 5,000 of those were skilled workers, meaning blacksmiths, crane operators, carpenters, etc. Those skilled worker jobs were for the white American workers only.
Yeah.
So when John Stevens got to Panama, he saw his labor force and he was already unhappy. God, I hate saying all of this. He preferred Chinese labor because he thought the West Indian workers were lazy and not intelligent. Ugh. But he had to take labor where he could get it. And a lot of those places were the nearby West Indies.
Yeah.
And a lot came from places like Barbados that people were struggling financially and would take a well-paying job like this would offer. So they would get, quote, Panama men. You know, I'm air quoting here, Panama men.
Yeah.
They would get someone, say, from Barbados. That's just the first one that came to my mind. They'd bring them over to Panama, let them work a little bit. Then they would clean them up real nice, give them a nice shiny white suit, a big fat Panama hat, pockets full of cash, gold teeth, send his ass back with a smile, and convince more people to come and work to make it look like you were going to be very prosperous if you went to the canal to work. And it worked.
Oh, I can imagine.
In droves. So these people were coming into these working conditions blind. They're like, I don't even know what am I doing? Like, I don't know. I just know that if I go over there, they've got work for me and I'm going to get money. It would take them 8 to 10 days on a boat to get there from, say, Barbados or other places in the West Indies. When they got there, their sleeping conditions were, this is the shack you're in. All 4 walls are covered in 3 rows of bunk beds. This is your bunk. See you first thing tomorrow morning. The white skilled workers would get their own house. Sometimes they would be in more of like a barrack situation, but they weren't as bad as this.
Yeah.
Like if they weren't in the married quarters, they probably wouldn't have their own house, but it was better than this. And it all came down to how you got paid. So the white skilled workers got paid in gold. The unskilled labor got paid in silver. So gold roll employees got paid sick leave, laundry service, holidays off, things of that nature. The silver roll employees got nothing. They got paid if they went to work. Everything was either gold or silver. We're talking segregation like it was in America, down to water fountains, buildings, certain things at markets. I mean, literally, instead of saying blacks only, whites only, they were saying gold roll employees only, silver roll employees only.
Ugh.
Very dehumanizing.
I hate that so much. And it's like...
Yeah. So, these I'm saying unskilled with like air quotes, guys. Unskilled laborers would get as little as 10 cents an hour, which is equivalent to $3.51 today an hour.
Oh my God.
And they would be sending money home. Unfortunately, that sounds like a very little amount of money, but that is more than what they would make back home.
Mm-hmm.
So they would stay. By, 1905, 1907, somewhere in that, 24,000 employees were employed there. So he did get up to like more than 3,500. Mm-hmm. More than 70% of those employees were from the West Indies.
Wow.
And yellow fever was starting to kill men by the hundreds.
No. Ugh.
Yeah. So, in 1904, a man named, maybe it was a little earlier than that, 24,000 employees, around 1904, 1905, something like that. So, in 1904, William Gorgas, who had been appointed the U.S. Army Medical Corps head of the Medical Corps in 1880, was appointed to come down and take a look at this yellow fever malaria problem. Very side note, but it's adorable and I can't not say it. He was appointed after the Spanish-American Wars. He was appointed to a place in Texas, and he was treating yellow fever patients. Well, one of those patients was a woman named Marie Cook Doughty, and she nearly died from the disease. But while taking care of her, he contracted yellow fever himself, and they both recovered together. And during their time recovering, they fell in love, and then they got married.
Aww.
How cute is that? And then they both worked to like eradicate yellow fever. Like he made that his life's work to get rid of yellow fever.
Oh, well, that's a noble mission.
It is. Now, his methods worked. We're gonna talk about why I'm a little stressed about his methods, but like they worked. I'll say that. So, like I said earlier, some people thought that it was brought in by unclean conditions. Other people thought it was ants. Nobody really knew. But after he had been stationed in Havana, he had read a little obscure article from a dude in Colombia. It was like in a magazine or a newspaper or something like that, mentioning that it could be spread by mosquitoes. Well, he did a little bit of experimenting and was like, "Ooh, I really think he's onto something. I think it is the mosquitoes." He carried out a very extreme eradication campaign in Havana, And over the course of a year, the malaria went down by over 90%.
Wow.
Because he killed all the mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Or most of them. So Gorgas was hired to, like, come take a look and figure out what's happening. So he put together a proposal to do the same thing in Panama, but obviously bigger, because now they're having 2 separate sites because they're digging on 2 separate ends and they have to go together, and it's bigger scale, but pretty much the same concept. He submitted a proposal for $1 million, and the commission, the Isthmus Commission, came back and was like, we can give you $50,000.
That's not even half.
No.
It's not even a quarter. It's not even a quarter.
No.
That's a
like
fraction.
A 16th. Like, okay, so they didn't believe in his mosquito theory. They're like, it's because the hospital isn't clean. Duh. Bruh. So on the eve of Gorgas's dismissal, I guess they were just going to say, fuck off, because he was sticking to his guns.
Yeah.
Roosevelt had a visitor at his home who happened to be his personal physician, Dr. Alexander Lambert. And Dr. Lambert said, quote, "You are facing one of the greatest decisions of your career. If you fall back on the old methods, you will fail, just as the French failed. If you back Gorgas, you will get your canal." End quote.
Wow.
He basically called his bluff and was like, oh, you going to do the same shit, different day?
Yeah.
Because it didn't work.
Look at doctors backing doctors.
Look at that. We need more support from doctors. So, Roosevelt, being called the fuck out by his own doctor, was like, no, we're backing Gorgas. Gave Gorgas the go-ahead. Give him whatever he needs. Dude went wild.
Oh, no.
3,000 garbage cans, 4,000 buckets, 1,000 brooms, and 500 pounds of soap, 120 tons of insecticide, and he spent $90,000 on screens just to go around patients so they wouldn't get bitten and transmit their disease to others.
Wow.
He would pour oil into swamps and ponds and anything that had still water. He would pour oil into it. He killed the larvae. He literally fumigated entire towns. He would go into every home and fumigate every single home. He would hunt down individual mosquitoes. He went on a war against mosquitoes. And he called the larvae wrigglers. And he made it a $5 fine to have a wriggler in your home.
Wow. I'm having very complicated feelings about
Me
this.
too.
Because on one hand, I am incredibly allergic to mosquitoes and I hate them with a fiery passion that I cannot even describe. So I'm like, yes, kill all the mosquitoes. But on the other hand, the environmental impact of like dumping oil into like,
that's why it was so
like the environment, like, ow, that's so painful.
Oh, watching them have little backpacks that were basically like kegs of oil with little sprayers. It hurt. I understand. It saved thousands of lives.
Yeah.
But, oh God, one of the documentaries said to this day, it is still one of the most disease-free strips of tropical land on Earth. And I don't know if it's because they probably just continuously keep that up. I mean, after over 100 years, 120 years, it can't all be the same oil that's there. Like, it's right. All... But I'm sure they still spray a lot, I'm sure, around the area. Because there are still people actively working and doing things there. And they don't... But still, it took him 1.5 years, and he basically wiped mosquitoes off the face of that strip of earth.
That's what it sounds like. If even to this day, like, it sounds
Yeah.
like mosquitoes are not spreading disease like they do everywhere else.
Yeah. So after a year and a half, by August of 1906, the monthly tally of new cases had fallen in half to 27. By September, it went down to just 7. So once he got them all killed, the new cases were just like done.
Yeah.
And then on November 11th, this is so fucking morbid. On November 11th, he called all the like nurses into the hospital morgue and was like, take a good look at this corpse. It's the last yellow fever victim you'll ever see. We didn't need to see that. We've seen enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a little morbid.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Hey,
but
you can yes. Continue talking. I have to pee again because liquids.
Liquids. Okay. So, thanks to this, by this time, in the fall of 1906, John Stevens' system was working peak because, he didn't have hundreds of people in, the hospital dying. They would go on to clear with Stevens' logistics. They would clear the amount of dirt, enough dirt, to build a wall the size of the Great Wall of China across the United States.
That's insane.
So much dirt. So, during this time, around 1906, we're having some PR problems with Roosevelt. Mostly over the canal. And I think people were still kind of like, bro, you stole Panama just to build a canal. But also, people were saying that there was some corruption and that the, quote, American boys are being ruined by prostitution and drink at the canal. Like,
isn't this right when, like, prohibition was starting to become a thing, too?
I think so, around the time. Just, oh my God, they work hard. Let them have a beer. Let them have their beer and titties.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. So, he was like, you know what? Fine. I'll go down to Panama and I'll see what's happening. I'll just go look for myself. Mm-hmm. This was the first time that an active sitting president had ever left the United States.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy? So in November of 1906, he went on down there. They had balls and parties and all that planned. So like when he got off the boat for the first time, it'd be like, everything is clean and wonderful and beautiful. Which they did all that. They did.
Yeah.
They didn't know that the night before he had snuck off the boat and actually took a look for himself of everything that actually was going down. Mm-hmm. He looked at the hospitals, the barracks, everything. He didn't want anything hidden. He purposefully went down to Panama during the peak of rain season to see Panama at its worst.
Yeah.
He just wanted to see what the worst of it was. And he made speeches to boost morale everywhere he went and give people a sense of pride and feel good about what they were doing because he knew, it's hard work. This was not a man that didn't know the value of hard work. And he ended up spending 12 days in the isthmus, and it was a really big turning point for this canal. And this is where we see him in the, like, steam shovel. He literally, like, told a dude, like, get out of there. And then he climbed up himself. I'm sure his secretary, like, everyone around him was like, for the love of God, Teddy, get out of the crane. You are stressing us out. You are so stressful. I'd be stressed. So that was in November of 1906. 2 months later, on January the 30th of 1907, John Stevens wrote a letter to Roosevelt himself, quitting.
Why?
He called it a, quote, big ditch, and that he wanted to do something else. He was fucking tired and uninspired, and he was like, I did all the fun things. I did the logistics. This thing is working really well.
All the problems have been solved.
It's just a big construction site now. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think he went to, like, Russia after this. Doing so. I don't, like, bro just wanted out. I think he was tired of the hot and the wet. So he just went to the cold and the wet. I don't know. But he was done. Roosevelt was pissed. I just feel bad for John Stevens. He's like, I just wanted to build a railroad. Anyway, so Roosevelt said he wanted to hire a military man that couldn't quit until he said he could quit. So he got a man named George Washington Goethals. He was an Army general and a civil engineer, and he would arrive in March of 1907. Just a mere month after arriving, the steam shovelmen went on strike. And these steam shovelmen were literally the backbone of the operation. I mean, it doesn't matter how many trains you have if there's no dirt to move.
Right.
They wanted their wages increased by more than 40%. They were already the best paid men in this whole operation. And Goethals was like, fine, you don't want to dig? We won't dig. So he just stopped it. And he gradually recruited strikebreakers, hired new crews. And after 4 weeks of the digging being halted, he sent the strikers packing. Said they couldn't come back. Wow. Bye-bye. So he sent them off. He sent off anyone that complained. By July, everything was up and running again with complete new operators. And he had made his point. I feel very complicated about this.
Yeah.
Because it feels like the operators waited until they got a new guy to see what they could get away with.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very interesting that it was the steam shovelmen that went on strike, who were already the best paid ones on the lot. And I can see, I don't really like this guy, but I can see where his mentality is.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you don't have control from the get-go, who's going to listen to you?
Right.
But I still don't really like this guy.
Yeah, I think you voiced all of my thoughts on the whole thing as well. It's like, I also understand, as a strike worker going on strike, like, yeah, like, why not try to fight for better conditions,
Right.
But I, like what you said, I do think it's interesting that it was so soon after he got there. They were the highest paid position, and then they got replaced by scabs and sent home, so.
Yeah. This is why I don't, okay. He became known as the Czar of Panama. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He not only ran the engineering efforts, but he also ran the entire Canal Zone government and the post office and everything.
Wow.
Everything went through him. He put the whole dig site under martial law.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
He did not mess around.
No, because he's an army guy. He's here to get shit done.
Yeah.
And Roosevelt told him
serious.
To do it. He's terrifying looking. I'm not gonna lie. I would not mess with that man.
Nope.
So, by the time Goethals had taken over, Americans had been there for more than 3 years. The locks had yet to be dug or constructed. Man, why didn't John Stevens just stick around for the locks? These things are really cool.
He's like, I've already
I don't know.
designed them. I don't need to be around for everything else.
So, up until this point, they had just widened the mountain. Now it was time to start digging down into it. So they had widened it, and now they're going down into like a V shape. And this was known as the Culebra Cut. They were the Culebra Mountains. I don't know if I said that earlier, but it's known as the Culebra Cut. So, under Gothel's rule, he made the Culebra Cut a round-the-clock operation. So, instead of just working during the day, he made day and night. So, they would have 300 drills, 60 to 70 shovels, trains, explosions. It was hot, wet, and constantly going. So, you can see it was a very dangerous place because everyone is now even more tired. They're working in shifts, and it was constant. One of the documentaries said, quote, "The mountain fought back," and it did. There was the constant rainfall made mud, landslides. They literally put it to like building a foundation of a house in mud. It would twist tracks.
It sounded like this land was like actively fighting against this canal being built from the jump.
Yeah. Yeah. People just died every day.
Mm-hmm.
It was so dangerous. And they interviewed some people. You can tell these are very old interviews that they played in the documentary, but these were people who from the West Indies that actually came over and worked, and they interviewed these people.
Oh, wow.
And like the interviews were like in black and white. They were so old.
Uh-huh.
But one guy said that they would have 3 to 5 blasts at a time. And you had like a warning to get out of the way. And sometimes people would just make a mistake and just touch the wire.
Oh, no.
And then they'd just explode.
Oh, no.
So once, apparently on a bright, beautiful Sunday morning, a pay car exploded with hundreds of men.
Oh, no.
People who knew that they were going to be laying dynamite that day would leave their belongings with their friends. Because their chances of coming back were not.
That's so sad.
Good. So, Gothel's actually had the train tracks extended all the way out to Mount Hope Cemetery so that the people could be buried more easily. Yeah.
Wow.
Because of all of these conditions, and obviously the white privilege is showing, the white workforce were arriving and then almost immediately turning around and leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Because of these conditions. It was almost a 100% turnover.
It doesn't surprise me.
No, me either. So in 1908, they ended up building new cottages for the white workers to incentivize them to stay. So they gave them better comforts, like ice boxes and electricity, and they got schools, YMCA, dance halls, baseball, churches, organizations to join, all the things.
All the creature comforts from home.
Yeah. While the Silver Roll employees still got to live in barracks.
Yeah.
Anyway. But the perks worked. And the people started staying and actually building some form of community there. So Panama became this very utopian representation of the United States. You know, images of happy, well-fed workers. But it was very autocratic. Not a bit of democracy. Whatever Goethel said went.
Yeah.
But also, in this situation, it got shit done.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that, like, to get projects done, you don't need a lot of, like, back and forth and discussion. This is getting done. This is how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
for maximum efficiency.
Definitely don't suggest doing this in a government, but like in this one situation, I'm not saying it was the best way to do it, but
it was effective.
It worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by 1911, they were making huge progress. And I didn't know this, but tourists actually started coming and watching the work.
People had nothing better to do.
They really did. In 1911, no, they were probably on their 2-month-long vacation with their husband as their honeymoon.
Let's traverse the Panamanian countryside and watch the laborers dig their dirt.
And explode on the mountainsides. So, yeah. My next section is just big-ass locks. So we're going to talk about the locks now.
Okay.
So at this point, let's establish where we're at. The locks are starting to be constructed. There's still no water in the dam. There is still no lake formed. They have built most of the dam that will form the lake, but they're still allowing water to run however they need to.
Yeah.
And then they're starting to build the locks on either side. But everything is still dry. So to build these locks, they would use 5 million bags of concrete. And they would mix them up in these giant mixers, pour them into buckets and dump them with cranes and stuff. That's 2 million cubic yards of concrete is in those 5 million bags. You apparently, because we're going to use anything but the metric system, you could build a 12-foot tall fence wall and circle Manhattan more than 4 times with that amount of concrete.
You're right. Anything but the metric system.
Literally anything. So these were, I don't know if they are still today, but up until that point at least, they were the biggest locks ever constructed. And it is so cool how they did it. I had no idea. The doors of the locks are hollow and they're buoyant, so the hinges don't have to carry so much weight.
Oh.
They're watertight.
Neat.
So they are so balanced that they can be operated by a single 40 horsepower motor. That's like John boat size motor. 40 horsepower is less than my Jeep Cherokee.
Yeah, that's not a lot. That's not a lot.
No.
Wow, that's very impressive.
And the entire dam system, I don't know if it still is, I don't see why it wouldn't be, was powered by hydroelectricity in 1911.
That's... For all the issues with the construction of the Panama Canal, it is a marvel of engineering.
Yeah. They call it one of the 7 modern marvels. 7 great wonders of the world, or whatever it is. Modern wonders of the world.
Yeah.
Insanity. So, the beginning of the end. In the spring of 1913, they really started crossing those T's, dotting those I's. In May of 1913, the steam shovels 222 and 230 dumped their last loads. Those were the last 2. They met at the center of the Culebra Cut. And that was the last cut, the last dig. In June, the last spillway at Gatun Dam was sealed, and that allowed the Gatun Lake to rise to its full height. In August, the dikes at either end of the line were blown, and that allowed the ocean to come in up to the gates of the lock. So not all the way in, but just into the gates. That September was the first trial from the Atlantic all the way up into the lake. And by summer's end, there was only one dry spot left, and that was Culebra Cut, the mountain part. And that was scheduled to be flooded on Monday, October the 10th. And apparently somebody put it in the newspaper that at 2 o'clock exactly, President Woodrow Wilson was scheduled to push a button in the White House, and that was going to telegraph a current that would blow up the dike and send the waters. And I'm like, that's PR.
That's silly.
It's silly, but you know what? Either people believed it or they're like, it's just a way for everyone to feel connected to this. Whatever.
Yeah.
Workers and families, dignitaries from other countries, tourists, everyone started gathering. And at 2 o'clock,
Woodrow Wilson pushed that button?
He pushed that button. But they did explode the wall that was holding that water. And they were like holding their breath because they're like, this is either going to work or it's not. And it worked.
Yay.
So the canal's official opening was scheduled for August the 14th in 1914. I guess they had some other, bugs making sure everything worked right. 12 days before that, a ship called the Cristobal became the first ship to cross it successfully. 100%. So, final numbers. It took 10 years, $350 million, which in today's money is probably way more than that.
Oh, gosh. Hang on.
Yeah,
I'm going to convert it. What year should I use? 1912?
Yeah, 14.
1914. Over $11 billion.
What the fuck? Oh my god. Oh my god. So, this sounds like a big number. It cost more than 5,000 lives in 10 years. But let's compare that to the 22,000 that the French
That's true.
did with just a handful of miles, just a few miles.
Mm-hmm.
22,000 compared to 10 years, and they finished it.
Yeah.
I think that's a vast improvement. I think, honestly, it was the eradicating of the yellow fever that really helped with that. I mean...
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
That's how much I would expect from just the dangerous conditions.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of those were yellow fever as well. So, it's not great, but it's what I expected.
Yeah.
So, this really did establish the United States as one of the most powerful nations on Earth at the time, because no one else, they did something impossible. We did something impossible. Roosevelt never saw it once it was finished. Even though it was like his pet project, he was like on a safari at the time that like it opened, and he just never went back.
Wow.
And most people just kind of went back home.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, for those silver roll workers, they went home with not really much more than what they showed up with. I guess, they did end up sending a lot of money home during that time, but still.
Yeah.
And apparently in 1992, they dug up 40 million tons of earth more to widen the canal for bigger, more modern ships. So they are continuing to improve. I don't know if they've needed to improve anything like that since 92, but which is still crazy to think that that was 32 years ago. But
it's
yeah. We're like, oh, that was so modern. More than our lifetime.
Just by a year.
By a year, but still.
And now we don't have to go around South America.
Now we get our packages way faster.
Yeah. When you were talking about like constructing the canal and stuff, it made me think of how like one of the missions that Lewis and Clark had. We talked about Lewis and Clark a while ago.
Yeah.
how one of their missions was to find some kind of waterway that went from coast to coast.
Yeah.
To, like, help with, like, the shipping and stuff. And it took, honestly, like, probably one of the biggest feats of engineering ever in the history of mankind to make that happen on the most narrow stretch of land connecting the Americas.
Yeah, and driving across the United States, just in a car, would take you probably 36 to 42 hours, depending. And that's just straight drive time. Yeah. That's not sleeping, staying overnight. That's just straight drive time. The amount of hope that Lewis and Clark had to find a waterway that just went right to left. It just...
yeah. Was not going to happen.
No. Crazy.
This is so interesting, and thank you for covering this. You did a great job.
Thank you. I've heard that it was like dark, like a dark history of the Panama Canal, and it's not as dark as I was anticipating. Mm-hmm. It's not like, do I think America was not the best and how they went about it?
Yeah.
Probably, but it was way better than like seizing it and killing everybody and then
it feels
taking it by force.
Maybe it's because we've been doing this for a while, but it just I kind of agree. Like, I thought it was going to be darker, but I think it's because it's kind of par for the course with what was just going on shocked. At the time. Yeah.
We're not surprised anymore.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, America tricked Panama into rebelling and backed Panama, but also paid off the Colombians to go away. So then it was like pretty much a bloodless revolution. And then the Americans were like, give me exactly what I wanted. And Panama had to be like, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that tracks. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. And then America just saying, I can do what I want and you can't tell me what to do.
Your country now.
Yeah.
I knight thee a country. We do have a lot of audacity, don't we?
It's baffling.
We're cocky. We are cocky motherfuckers.
Yep.
Yeah. Not all of us are, guys. I promise.
I feel like as a whole, like if you're just like America,
yeah,
America as a whole is an asshole.
Yeah. But guys, we're not assholes.
No.
So if we come visit your country, be nice to us.
Please, we love your country and we will treat it with the utmost respect and we will not try to colonize it and claim it for ourselves.
No. And
Promise.
We will cover it on an episode of the pod.
Yeah.
Invite us to your country. You will have to pay. We have no money. It was just Christmas, guys. It was just Christmas.
We're still recovering.
Yeah. So let's get into socials.
Let's do it.
Okay. You can find us on Facebook,
Ill-Equipped History Podcast Group and Page.
Gmail,
illequippedhistory@gmail.com.
TikTok,
@illequippedhistory.
Instagram,
@illequippedhistory.
and Patreon.
Patreon.com/illequippedhistory. We have bonus episodes and stickers.
If you want to build a canal, maybe try asking nicely first.
Yeah, and pay people what they're worth. And
don't stop segregating people.
Yeah, don't do that. I hate that.
Yeah. I hate that so much. And if you find yourself in bed with yellow fever, don't put cups of water at the feet of your bed.
No, don't do that. Get some antibiotics.
It's not the ants.
It's not. It's the mosquitoes.
Yeah. Drink some quinine.
There you go. Have some gin and tonic.
Yeah, get you a gin and tonic, a G&T. I can't drink gin anymore, though, so I think I'll just drink the tea.
Just a tonic. It's fine. Just a little bit of lime juice. Make it tasty. Refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I put vodka in it? I'm just kidding.
You do whatever you want. You're an adult.
I am. Only by age. Only by age. Mentally.
You have that
struggling.
cool hat that says mom on it.
I do. My son got me a cool hat that says mom for Christmas, and I love it.
That's so cute.
It is super cute. I've worn it all day. It was a not hair wash day, so I threw a hat on. And can't wait to hang up the disco ball. Might hang it up in my closet for future recording mishaps where I have to be in here.
You should.
And you know what? Who doesn't want to get dressed under a disco ball every day? It's like a party every morning.
Party in your closet.
Yeah. That sounds like an innuendo for something.
It does. I was trying to make a joke, but my brain is...
I'm fried.
It's
I'm
not
fried,
doing
guys.
it.
Tomorrow's episode was recorded before this one, so we have been recording for how many hours now?
Like 3.
3.5,
no,
something
7.
like that.
We started at 7:30 my time, 8:30
Yeah.
your time. Almost 4.
Yeah. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. I have gone through almost an entire box of tissues in the background.
I've had almost 2 cups of hot tea and a glass of wine.
It's lovely.
Yeah. We should let these people go.
Let's go.
Yeah. We wish you a happy new year.
Yes.
We hope health and prosperity and wonderful things to each and every one of you.
Yes.
We all collectively, I'm speaking on behalf of our listeners, we wish health on Morgan.
Thank you.
Don't die on us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully I'll be better by the next one.
And I don't know. I think I'm just going to go manifest some good juju to happen for everyone because, oh my God.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Go do great things.
Yes. Okay, bye.